In today's mailbag, I'll answer your latest questions on the Damian Lillard trade saga, including Joel Embiid. There's a lot of fun stuff that I'm going to get into in this one, but first, this mailbag is sponsored by Manta Sleep Mask. Manta is the #1 sleep mask brand on the market. They have a variety of sleep masks to fit your needs and get you a good night's sleep. This is the Manta Sound Mask. It has Bluetooth adjustable speakers. It's not fitting perfectly because I always have to wear a hat in every video. But these Bluetooth adjustable speakers can connect to your phone and you can listen to sounds of nature or the ocean or a waterfall as you fall asleep peacefully and blissfully. If you don't have air conditioning, I highly recommend the Manta Cool Eye Cups. Those are a game changer as summers get hotter and hotter. They also have steam cups and aromatherapy. So these masks are extremely customizable to fit your needs. If you use my promo code UPRISE, you'll receive a 10% discount at mantasleep.com. There's a link in the description box below. Take care of yourself or someone you love with a Manta Sleep Mask. First question is from Caleb Floyd, who says, assuming Dame is traded, how long do you think Jeremy will be around after he is trade eligible? Is he here for the long term or a trade chip? If he is a trade chip, what teams do you think would be interested and what could we realistically get? Thanks for the awesome content during this tough time in Rip City. So apparently Joe Cronin still thinks this team can be competitive, and if they are competitive, maybe the Blazers keep Jeremy Grant throughout next season, but I do think there is a legitimate chance that he's traded at next year's trade deadline for a team that wants him. However, if he has a slightly worse season than last year, I don't think he'll have a ton of trade value on that contract, and at that point, it would just make sense for Portland to hang on to him anyway. The Jeremy Grant situation is going to be fascinating to see it play out, and as far as teams that would be interested, basically any team that's trying to win that needs a starting power forward would be a team that you could see trading for him. Maybe a team like Boston, a return to Philadelphia, or a scenario like that. The problem is there's a lot of winning teams that don't have future picks and don't really have assets left to trade. And assuming Dame gets traded, that'll be another team in that situation in the Heat. So it might be hard to find a deal for Jeremy next season. Alex Wolf says, assuming you guys end up getting Jovic back in a Miami deal, what are your current thoughts on him and his ceiling? I love his skill set for his size. Reportedly is 6'11" without shoes now and can handle the ball, pass the ball a little bit. He's somebody that's not going to impress on the defensive side of the ball, and with the Blazers backcourt with Simons, Scoot, and Sharp, I want the Blazers to have a good defensive front court. I'm not sure Jovic really fits that. So if Jovic ends up in Portland, then I see him as maybe a sixth man in the future, somebody that can come into the game and change the complexity of a game with his size and skill set combination. I think he has the ceiling to be a starter in the league. I just don't know if him being a starter on the Portland Trail Blazers with the way their core is built makes the most sense. Kev Warner says, what are your main hopes for the Blazers this coming season, and how good do you think Anthony Simons will be? Point per game, all-star level. I think Ant will be a 22 to 24 point per game score, and I don't think he's going to be an all-star because I don't think the Blazers are going to be a good team next year without Damian Lillard. But you'll be able to make the case that Anthony Simons is an all-star caliber player, that maybe if he was on the right team that was good enough, or he could be the lead guard, that he would be, in fact, an all-star. I expect Anthony Simons to be better than he was last year. He's still young enough to improve. He's barely 24 years old, so I expect a jump from Simons next season. This question is from Brandon Tatum, who says, what do you think we do with Scoot, Ant, and Sharp? Start all three with Sharp at the 3, bring Sharp off the bench, assuming Grant and Nurk play the 4 and the 5. I think at this point, Scoot and Simons definitely start in the backcourt, and then the starting small forward spot is between Shaedon Sharp and Matisse Thybulle. I think Shaedon Sharp will have the lead there going into training camp, but I think he needs to show more intensity on the defensive end, and he needs to take a bit of a jump on that side of the ball, because offensively, the Blazers have creators. They have guys that can score, and with Sharp, don't get me wrong, that's where his upside lies in him becoming a star. But I think Chauncey is going to hold Sharp accountable for the defensive side of the ball because he has the ability to be a decent defensive piece. I just question his motor and intensity and consistency on that end. He was a rookie, so I gave him a pass, but this is where he needs to start showing improvement, and if he doesn't, I could see Thybulle starting over him. Snackin' K asks, if Dame doesn't get traded and we go into the season and we're winning games, how do you think this team will look after the deadline? I would be absolutely shocked if Dame doesn't get traded, and if he's playing in a Blazer uniform next year. And I would be shocked if that team is winning a bunch of games because they didn't solve their biggest issues, which is perimeter defense and size. I see this team being mediocre at best. But if they are winning games, then you could see an Anthony Simons and or Shaedon Sharpe trade for a piece that helps balance the team and make it better defensively. I just don't think Cronin wants that path. I don't think he's committed to that path. I think he wants to go young. So that's why I'd be surprised if something like that played out. Smoke says, how long should we keep the 3-guard lineup of Simmons, Sharpe, and Scoot together? I think that depends on how competitive Sharpe is defensively at the small forward spot. I think that depends on Scoot's and Simons' defense in combination with each other. And I think that depends on how all three pan out offensively, as well as what you could get back for any one of those three guys if you look to move them. So it's hard to put a time limit on that 3-guard pairing. I wouldn't just trade one of them out just to not have all three of them. I think at this point you play all three of them together and try and develop them as best as possible and see where that ends up. C-Dog asks, how would you feel if we could pull off a Joel Embiid trade with the Embiid rumors to keep Dame? Thank you for helping me come up with a title for this video, C-Dog. I don't think Joel Embiid would be somebody that Joe Cronin would go after because it would require trading Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe and probably Anthony Simons and maybe a pick or two, and I don't think Cronin wants to go that route. I don't think Cronin has any interest in Joel Embiid, and if Joel Embiid gets traded, I fully expect him to be a New York Knick. Actually, he has a house apparently in the New York area, and the Knicks have been stockpiling first-round picks in order to have the potential assets to make a superstar blockbuster trade, such as bringing Joel Embiid to the Big Apple and having him as their starting center. Embiid would actually make a ton of sense in New York, and they would be a true contender with a Jalen Brunson, Joel Embiid, point guard center, pick and roll duo, as well as some of the solid role players that they've accumulated, such as a Quentin Grimes, Josh Hart, etc. Min Mom says, I'm listening to Dame on Wait, Don't Tell Me. He's so cool. How do we accept that he's leaving? I can't stop being sad. I mean, you just have to accept it on your own time. I understand being sad. I've been very sad about this. At this point, I've kind of accepted that this is the unfortunate reality of this Blazers offseason, but if you haven't gotten to that point, I can't blame you whatsoever because, yeah, he's the epitome of what a trailblazer should be. He's a guy who's represented this organization great, and in my opinion, is the most talented player in franchise history. It's not easy to move on from that. It is very frustrating. So my thoughts are with you. Hopefully at some point we get some closure to the situation. Maybe Dame comes out and says what truly went down. It is tough though, given how long this has taken and how long this might drag out over the next couple of weeks or maybe months. Sam Dooley says, I'm probably late with this one. No, you're not. Now that the Blazers have decided that they're trading Dame, which Blazer is a safe bet to buy their jersey? I'm hoping for someone that's here 10 plus years. The last ones I've bought were all Dame. Do you think Sharpe lasts that long, or does Ant pull through with longevity, or does Scoot lead the team through to a new team owner? Who's enough of a star to stay, but not enough of a trade chip to be gone in a few years? I think the answer is clearly Scoot Henderson. I have more confidence in Scoot becoming a star than a Shaedon Sharpe, and I have more confidence that Scoot will be on the team in 5 years than Shaedon Sharpe. So that's your bet, Sam. But if I jinxed it and he gets traded a year from now, which would just be crazy. I mean, the only way Scoot gets traded in the next few years is if Dame doesn't. So, yeah, you're guaranteed to have a jersey of someone on the team if you buy Scoot. Because I don't see Scoot and Dame both being gone the next 3 to 5 years. So, there you go. I got you. Shout out to Jordan Hutchison, who says, looking forward to the 2023-2024 season and are now rebuilding Blazers. What is the one thing you want to see from Billups? What is one thing you want to see from the team as a whole? What one player on the current roster are you looking to break out apart from Sharpe and Scoot? I want to see Billups just challenge these guards defensively. I don't want him to hide Sharpe or Scoot or Simons on the defensive side of the ball because I think next season is all about developing those guys, and you're only going to develop them defensively if you challenge them and throw them into the fire. I don't want to see Jeremy Grant on guards. I think this team will be better for it, actually, because Jeremy Grant struggled on guards and wasn't around the rim to help out when dribble penetration happened, made it really tough on Jusuf Nurkic. Who knows if he's here next year. I'm not really worried about winning games, though. I'm worried about development, so that's why I want Billups to challenge those guards. One thing I want to see from the team as a whole, I mean, just as I said, development, and then one player on the current roster that I'm looking to break out. Chat. I called you chat. You're basically the comment section because it's a video, not a live stream, but comment section, let me know who one player you think will break out apart from Sharp and Scoot. I mean, honestly, I say Simons. There's a chance he becomes a 27-point per game scorer. I just don't think anybody else really has a ton of upside on this roster. Maybe a Jabari Walker, but other than that, it's hard to pinpoint another potential breakout player. Kyle Wilson says, assuming Nurk gets traded, who plays center this season, are there still any available in free agency that Portland could or would want to get? I mean, there's a bunch of mediocre veteran bigs in free agency. Bismack Biyombo, Frank Kaminsky, Willie Cauley-Stein. Like, there's a number of guys that you could just bring in and plug on a rebuilding team that wouldn't be here long term. Like, if Nurk gets traded, I have no idea, because the Blazers have nobody. I mean, maybe Chris Murray, maybe Jabari Walker, like maybe this team just says screw it and goes small. Jabari Walker can rebound at least, and maybe is a situation where they try and have as much floor spacing for the three guards. This team is confusing right now because even if they do trade Dame, they don't have big men depth and they just haven't done anything. So, I mean, the offseason still is in the middle of things, even though the rest of the league is basically done. Other than Miami. We'll see how they fill out the rest of the roster. I just expect it to be in a Dame trade, and they called it good. Shout Randy Wynn, who says, what forward do you think best complements Sharp and Scoot? I think a 3-and-D forward that isn't super ball dominant is the best type of complement. So like Jeremy Grant, if he didn't isolate as much maybe and was a better perimeter defender. If you're looking for like a young guy, I thought Omax Prosper fit this core really, really well, and the Blazers could draft him at 23. They didn't. I think Leonard Miller would have fit this core really, really well and has some chemistry with Scoot, just if you're looking at young guys, and the Blazers passed on him as well. Maybe Chris Murray can become that forward, that 3-and-D guy that's not ball dominant, but I'm higher on a couple of guys that were taken after Chris Murray in the draft. Aiden Mount says, which Blazer are you most excited to watch next year? Scoot. Simple. Mason Wright asks, would you do a trade centered around Keldon Johnson and Anthony Simons? Definitely not, because Anthony Simons is the better offensive player, and Keldon Johnson is a really bad defender. I feel like he is actually overrated defensively. For some reason, people think he's okay on that end. He's not. He would not solve the defensive issues whatsoever. I know he's a little bigger, but that's not all there is to defense. I'm not a Keldon Johnson fan on this team. Shout out to Josh Sargent, who asks, what are some 4 and 5 players we can look at targeting in the 2024 draft? We need size. Well, the good news is, right now, the projected top 5 picks in the 2024 NBA draft are all forwards. You got guys like Matas Buzelis, Ron Holland, Justin Edwards, and I'm probably going to butcher his name, but Izan Almansa. Buzelis, Holland, and Almansa all play for the GLeague Ignite, so when the GLeague Ignite come into Portland to play the remix, I highly recommend going to that game. I will probably be at that game scouting those guys up close and personal, because that's a great opportunity for probably a pretty cheap price in order to kind of get some more insight live during the season next year on 3 guys that could go in the top 5 and all could make sense for the Portland Trailblazers. Aeromancer drank some alcohol again, but shout out to him for being a moderator, I guess. Eli Hanna asks, can players on non-rookie deals be sent down to the G League? Absolutely. A lot of times you'll see players rehabbing big-time injuries. They'll go down and practice with the G League. Occasionally, they'll play a game, like a rehab game with the G League. Anybody can be sent down to the G League. The thing is it's mostly just used for guys that need reps, and veterans that are barely on the roster don't really need extra reps. They're just veterans that aren't that good, so it doesn't really make sense to send them down to the G League and take minutes from a younger guy who actually needs those reps. DMT Goob says, what do you think an honest Damian Lillard trade would look like? One from the Heat, one from other teams. Thank you. I don't think any other teams are going to realistically make a trade for Dame. I think it's going to be the Heat, and I think it's going to be Jovic, hopefully 3 first-round picks, and then Hero flipped to a third team for a first or 2, so Portland gets 4 or 5 firsts, and Jovic on top of an expiring contract, hopefully, and like a Kyle Lowry. That's the deal for Portland. King MP4 says, is Nurkic and Little in, or will be in a Dame trade, or will it be someone else? The thing is, Portland doesn't need to worry about matching salary in a Dame trade because they're probably going to take back less, so they don't need to include Nasir Little in such a trade. And Nurkic might be included. I don't know if he wants to be here now that Dame is on the outs, given how this front office seemingly misled Damian Lillard and, by extension, Yusuf Nurkic. I'm sure Nurk is a bit frustrated with how this offseason has gone down, and he had tweets, and I'm paraphrasing this, but that basically said, we're all getting traded if the Blazers front office doesn't come through, so I think there's a chance Nurkic gets traded. I don't see Little being included in a trade, but I could be wrong. Shout out to Mark Hakes, who says, Keon and Nate Butler for Suggs or Orcada. Well, I think Kata's a free agent, so I just sign him. That answers the earlier question of a big man to go after. Kata would maybe be my number one choice right now. And then I would love to get Suggs, but he's not available for Keon, and I don't know who Nate Butler is. I don't know if you mean Nate Williams and John Butler, but yeah, that's not getting the deal done for Suggs, unfortunately, and the Blazers don't really need another guard. Shout out to Clearly a Bot, says, is there even a 0.05% chance they keep Dame for about 20 games, give or take, to crack the 20k points as a Blazer, then ship him to South Beach? This is from a brokenhearted Blazer fan. They're not going to keep Dame just so he can break 20,000 points, and Dame's not going to stay and play just to break 20,000 points and then get traded. So I think there's a 0% chance they keep Dame for that reason. I think there's a greater than 0% chance, though, that Dame is in a Blazer uniform next year, but it's a very, very, very small chance in my opinion. Probably less than 1% if I had to put odds on it. I don't see him being a Blazer uniform next season. Shout out to Pineapples, who says, who takes Dame's spot in the All-Star in the West, and whose spot does he take in the East? Given that there's a bunch of injuries, it's kind of hard to project because you had guys getting their spots taken because they were injured. So assuming that less injuries happen, it's probably just one of those injured guys. Whose spot does Dame take in the East? I mean, honestly, you could say that him and Bradley Beal will flip-flop. I don't think Bradley Beal was an All-Star last year, but I think in Phoenix, assuming that team is going to be at the top of the West, I think Bradley Beal could be an All-Star again this year, and I think you could have a bit of a flop there. And then shout out Pineapples, who says, how 100% are you that we send Jeremy Grant to Dallas at the deadline for Lively and stuff? That is possible. However, I think it's dependent upon how well Omax Prosper plays for them, because he could be their Dorian Finney-Smith, and I'm not sure they need a Jeremy Grant type of player if Omax Prosper is knocking down threes and proves that he can guard 4 positions at the NBA level. So I'm not 100% sure, but that is one of those landing spots, and getting a Derek Lively back for Jeremy Grant, I'd be pretty happy with, especially if you had Prosper thrown in there, or maybe another young guy, maybe a Josh Green. Dallas would have to match salary, though, so you'd have to include maybe a Rashawn Holmes and a Tim Hardaway Jr. There is some other stuff that have to be included that maybe I wouldn't have a ton of interest in, but hopefully it'd just be expiring contracts. Shout out to Clearly About with another question. Can we get Ben Simmons instead of Tyler Hero and get an extra first in the deal? That is absolutely possible. I could see Tyler Hero getting traded to the Nets trading a 2025 Phoenix first to Miami making their 2025 first to OKC unprotected, and then that would allow Miami to trade 4 first-round picks, actually. And then maybe Brooklyn gives up another first in the deal since they're getting off Simmons and they're getting Hero, and that would get Portland its 5 first-round picks. And shout out to Patriot, who says, what percentage of Dame's decision to ask for a trade came from the national media pressure campaign, weeks and really years, for him to get out of Portland? This was a hit job on Portland. Screw Portland fans, he needs to be in New York. Report the news, don't make the news. Effing BS. Dame was never, ever going to make a decision because of the national media. Dame doesn't care. Dame isn't the type of guy to let media run his life. Dame's not that type of person. Dame's trade request came because of the front office saying they were obligated to build around him and wanted to be super aggressive in terms of pushing their chips all in, implying that they were okay with even overpaying for someone in order to build around Dame. But basically, the last 2 years, they've been starting a rebuild and haven't been committed to doing that. And none of their actions have lined up with doing that. Instead, they've just traded players away for next to nothing, and outside of bringing in Jeremy Grant, really haven't brought in anybody that makes any sort of impact whatsoever. They started a rebuild. They've been quietly rebuilding for 2 years while trying to tell Dame that they're committed to winning. And it became very obvious when they drafted a 19-year-old at Dame's position. That's why Dame demanded a trade. Anyway, that wraps up this video. Thank you for watching. Remember to check out the link in the description box below and use the promo code UPRISE for a 10% discount on Manta sleep masks. All sorts of options to get you a good night's sleep. So hopefully you take care of yourself and check them out. And with that being said, I'm out of here. I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.